Hey friends, stay tuned for the debut of John Carroll's Union Made at the very end of today's show. There's links in the show notes, but I will debut it here on the show for the first time at the very end, so stay tuned for that. Joining me today, the brilliant, hilarious, and always awesome Wajahat Ali joins me to talk about a whole bunch of current events and people that you're reading about in the news. Always a great conversation with Waj. If you want to skip to that, it starts at 23 minutes after a very comprehensive, robust news recap with some pretty good audio clips. I don't want you to miss that, but if you must, it's 23 minutes, Waj, and I start. I hope you had a good weekend. Sorry, Teresa, that I didn't get a show up on Monday, and to everybody else who reached out to me. No, everything's fine. I had posted my conversation with Michael Cauvin on Sunday, and I was hoping that would suffice because I had a bit of a rough one on Sunday evening. Listen, folks. Over the weekend on Saturday, I was out doing some lawn work, some landscaping, some getting ready for fall stuff, and I was weed whacking, and I nailed a hornet's nest, which I knew was there and should have remembered, and I got stung a whole bunch of times around the ankle. Bees were all over me, and I threw the weed whacker, and I screamed, and I ran into the back because I was going to jump into the pool, like, you know, a cartoon character. I think you're supposed to do that. And by the time I got back there, they were all gone. I didn't see any left, so I didn't have to jump in the pool. But then I had major pain in my ankle. I'm not allergic to them, and I wasn't worried about anything other than the localized pain. But man, it really hurt all night long. So I woke up, everything was fine. Pain was gone, beautiful day. So I went back out there to do some more work, and I had my hedge trimmers, my electric hedge trimmers, and I thought I was, far enough away from the bees. I actually wasn't even thinking about them at this point. And all of a sudden, they were all over me again. These yellow jackets that burrow into the ground. These useless bastards. I give them too much respect by calling them bees. They're not even pollinators, for God's sake. And this time, again, I threw my tool. Neighbors saw me too. I ran into the back. They were all over me. I jumped into the pool, clothes on, shoes on, phone in my pocket, watch on, hat on, everything. And then I started ripping off my clothes because there was one inside my shirt, and it was a whole thing. This time they got me all over my right arm, and I immediately took an antihistamine. I put the baking powder, baking soda, and water mix on there, and a little cortisone cream to treat it, and it wasn't nearly as bad, as painful as the day before, but it still really hurt. And that's no excuse as to why I didn't have a show, but it's as close as I'm getting. I think I just got a little lazy on Sunday night. But I am back. I am fine, totally fine. I just shared that with you because it's hilarious. And they are not going to beat me. Tonight, I poured gasoline in their hole and set them on fucking fire so they can eat shit. And that should be that. Yellow jackets in the ground. If you've never had them, you don't want them. But if you do, give me a call. I'll tell you exactly how to deal with them with only 18 stings. Attended a local Democratic fundraiser for my friend Pat Carroll on Monday night. If you're not involved in local politics, get involved. It's fun, great people, and you can actually do good things. So get involved locally, please. And now it's time to talk about what's happening in the world. Man, there's a lot of news over the past few days, huh? Well, yesterday was day 972 of the Biden presidency. There are 413 days until the next presidential election. So much time still. And here is yesterday in one sentence from WTF Just Happened Today, one of my favorite daily emails by an independent creator named Matt Weiser. He writes, Kevin McCarthy's latest short-term funding proposal to avert a government shutdown doesn't have enough votes to pass. Federal prosecutors asked the judge overseeing Trump's indictment for conspiring to overturn the 2020 election to impose a narrowly tailored gag order on him. Trump himself accused, quote, liberal Jews on the final day of the Jewish New Year celebration of voting to, quote, destroy America and Israel. He actually said that. He said it's liberal Jews trying to destroy America and Israel. And he said it on the final day of Rosh Hashanah. Lashana Tova from Trump. Trump, who appointed 3 Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe v. Wade, called Florida's 6-week abortion ban a terrible mistake. So I guess he wants it both ways. President Biden, for his part, sent acting Labor Secretary Julie Su and White House senior advisor Gene Sperling to Detroit help mediate negotiations between the United Auto Workers and the big three automakers, where, by the way, 75% of Americans said they support the United Auto Workers, who have walked out. About 12,700 of the union's 150,000 automotive members, about 9% of the unionized workforce, stopped making vehicles and went on strike last week following failed negotiations on cost of living adjustments and quality of life improvements. I hope you're paying attention to that story. I'll probably be talking to somebody about it, but we'll see what happens and how long. If that lasts past the week, then probably bad news. And if you or anybody who knows a UAW member that wants to talk to me anonymously, give them my email, standupwithpete@gmail.com. And in other news, yesterday, 5 Americans who had been imprisoned in Iran left the country after the U.S. negotiated their release, President Biden said. The agreement involved unfreezing $6 billion in Iranian oil revenue and dismissing federal charges against 5 Iranians. The deal was a result of 2 years of high-stakes talks and is part of a larger effort by the Biden administration to de-escalate tensions with Iran. Of course, news of the arrangement generated intense criticism, according to the New York Times, from Republicans who say that releasing billions in oil revenue amounts to paying a ransom and that it could lead to taking of more hostages. Biden administration officials have said the agreement with Iran is the only way to win release of the 5 Americans and have denied that the deal indicates a major shift in long hostile relationship between the U.S. and Iran. And as much as you would think Republicans would be complaining more about that, there was something else that they were talking a lot about yesterday, and it's, well, the dress code in the U.S. Senate. Here's the governor of Florida, presidential candidate, and walking sausage man, Ron DeSantis, taking issue with this, of all things.
So did you guys hear the U.S. Senate just eliminated its dress code because you got this guy from Pennsylvania who's got a lot of problems. I mean, let's just be honest, like how he got elected. Well, I mean, he got elected because they didn't want the alternative, but he wears like sweatshirts and hoodies and shorts. And that's his thing. So he would campaign in that, which is your prerogative, right? I mean, if that's what you want to do. But to show up in the United States Senate with that and not have the decency to put on proper attire, I think it's disrespectful to the body. And I think the fact that the Senate changed the rules to accommodate that, I think speaks very poorly to how they consider that. Look, we need this country. We need to be lifting up our standards in this country, not dumbing down our standards in this country. And this is an example why.
Well, there you go. Ron DeSantis yesterday on the campaign trail, and Senator John Fetterman responded to Ron DeSantis on Twitter. He said, "I dress like you campaign." He dresses like shit. And Ron DeSantis campaigns like shit. And Nate Silver, who is the political analyst and predictor of elections, has gotten a lot of things wrong. A lot of people do not like he's fallen really out of favor. He used to be the golden boy. Anyway, he said yesterday, and got a lot of grief for this tweet, "I'm starting a new political party for people who don't give a shit either about how John Fetterman dresses or what Lauren Boebert does in a theater." And John Fetterman quoted that tweet and said, "I dress like you predict." Which is, again, terribly. Yeah. Also, what a ridiculous comparison. John Fetterman dressing and Lauren Boebert. One of those things is a terribly unbecoming of a congressperson, wildly hypocritical, indecent, and illegal. Another guy just doesn't want to wear a suit, which, say what you will about it. I just can't imagine saying much about it at all. All right. And speaking of bullshit from Republicans, I thought this was really interesting because here is Republican Ken Buck, who's a very conservative guy, debunking one of the many accusations from Republicans that President Biden, when he was vice president, he influenced the firing of a corrupt inspector in Ukraine. Well, he didn't. It couldn't have been further from the truth. And here is conservative Republican Congressman Ken Buck on Fox News saying just that, explaining it.
So the evidence is very strong against Hunter Biden. There is very little evidence that links Hunter Biden with Joe Biden. Hunter Biden received a lot of money from Burisma, a Ukrainian oil and gas company. And Joe Biden fired a Ukrainian prosecutor named Shokin. The theory, I guess, is that the Burisma paid money to Hunter Biden so that Joe Biden would fire Shokin because Shokin was investigating Burisma. One, there is little to no evidence that Shokin was investigating Burisma. Two, Shokin was targeted by the European Union as well as our State Department to be fired because he was more corrupt than the people he was investigating. And three, there is very little evidence to no evidence that suggests that Hunter Biden actually shared the money he got with Joe Biden so that Joe Biden would do something, or that Joe Biden knew that Hunter Biden was getting money so that Joe Biden would take these acts. That's what has to be investigated, and I'm all for the investigation, not an inquiry with the label of impeachment. But we have three committees right now, the Oversight Committee, the Judiciary Committee, and the Ways and Means Committee, that are investigating Hunter Biden's activities. And they're doing a great job. They're uncovering a lot of good information. They just haven't found that link yet with Joe Biden.
Again, Republican Congressman Ken Buck on Fox News making the argument. By the way, Joe Biden was vice president. He didn't have the authority to fire anybody in Ukraine. It was about him trying to influence the ouster of him, but everybody wanted that guy out, as you just heard. Well, a lot of people have been saying you're investigating Joe Biden's family. What about Donald Trump's kids? And I just saw from a few days ago, last week, Congressman Robert Garcia of California, he's asking for investigations on the House floor. I thought this is a solid 2 minutes from him.
I rise today to urge House Republicans to investigate one of the modern American scandals and political cons. Now, why did the Saudi government give Jared Kushner $2 billion just months after he left the Trump White House? Kushner, who oversaw Middle East policy for his father-in-law, has enriched himself and his family in what is clearly an enormous grift and likely serious conflict of interest crimes. So let's review. First, Jared Kushner conned his way to a cushy White House job with no clear job description and no experience. Then he took it upon himself to prioritize pushing out the U.S. Secretary of State so he could cozy up to the Saudi government. Now, once he was close enough to the Saudis, we have records of a $110 billion arms deal between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia that was inflated at the direction of Jared Kushner. Then, mere months after Kushner exits the White House, what happens? The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia overrules his own investment advisors and sends $2 billion to Kushner's company's bank account. Now, in the exact words of Republican Chris Christie, who I'll quote, "The grift from this family is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner walk out of the White House and months later get $2 billion from the Saudis." Now, some colleagues from across the aisle have explicitly said the Kushner family has engaged in business dealings that may have crossed the ethical line, and I agree, yet they refuse to act. Is this the same party that's obsessed with President Biden's family? And the American people deserve answers, and I urge my colleagues across the aisle to answer all our calls and subpoena Jared Kushner's company once and for all. Thank you, and I yield back.
All right, Robert Garcia asking the questions that need to be asked about Jared Kushner and Ivanka, who, of course, were given jobs. They were given jobs in the government, in the White House, which, of course, at any other level of government, for a mayor, a governor, a town supervisor, you would never appoint your son and their husband or wife or any relative to a job. It would look so terrible, but somehow that was okay, and they took full advantage of it. That is for sure. I'm glad Robert Garcia is talking about it on the House floor. I doubt anything will happen with it, but it's still really important, and we'll see. The hypocrisy over them looking into Hunter Biden and his relationships and completely ignoring Jared and Ivanka, of course, never ceases to astound. And while talking about hypocrisy, a new report by my friend Anna Merlin at Vice News, not my friend, but she was on the show for the first time, great journalist at Vice News, and Tim Marchman outlines this investigation into Operation Underground Railroad. I talked to her last week about this, and huge news today about Tim Ballard, who is the dude behind this organization, champion this nonprofit, saying he is a hero battling child sex trafficking. Well, guess what? He himself was allegedly sexually abusing women and making them prove how far they were, quote, willing to go in the name of the cause. The organization that he helped found, Operation Underground Railroad, has parted ways with him. The headline at Drudge: Sound of Freedom hero sex scandal. Ballard grooming claim church condemns the Mormon Church. This is Tim Ballard himself accused of grooming by the organization that he founded, and grooming in the real authentic way, meaning creating trust and building a relationship with these young women so that he could later have sex with them. I mean, that's exactly what he is accused of doing. It's real bad, and I hope that everybody who saw that Sound of Freedom movie, which is a dramatization of Tim Ballard and his missions, played by actor Jim Caviezel, holds his feet to the fire. They won't. They're already coming out and attacking the reporters, as are the defenders of Russell Brand and you name it. By the way, really interesting, I thought, rant from, or commentary from Chris Hayes on last night on MSNBC. I wanted to just play a couple of minutes of him talking about Russell Brand and those who have come out to support him after this major news story from the Sunday Times and allegations from 4 women of sexual assault and 1 underage woman apparently of rape.
Now, when given a chance to reply to these allegations, Brand's lawyers told those news outlets that their client believes there is a, quote, deeply concerning agenda to all this, namely the fact that he is an alternative media broadcaster competing with the mainstream media. And then Brand himself released a video statement saying his relationships were, quote, always consensual, that he absolutely refutes the allegations. And he went on to allege there's a serious and concerted agenda to control these kinds of spaces that he occupies, and accuses the mainstream media of a coordinated attack. Now, let me just say, I didn't report this story. We haven't confirmed it. I don't know whether these allegations are true. I can only consider the evidence presented in the published investigation, and I would suggest people read it because it's pretty harrowing stuff. That said, I do find it difficult to believe that Russell Brand has been targeted because of his brave truth-telling on the war in Ukraine or his vaccine skepticism. And yet that line of defense is a very persuasive one, not just for his audience, but for the whole gamut of folks who are enmeshed in this lucrative, hermetically sealed universe of distrust and disinformation. And a lot of them, shocker, are expressing their solidarity with Russell Brand. Fired cable news host Tucker Carlson wrote, "Criticize the drug companies, question the war in Ukraine, and you can be pretty sure this is going to happen." Far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones echoed that claim, saying the allegations suddenly appeared after Brand came out against the New World Order. And right-wing influencer, self-proclaimed misogynist Andrew Tate, who you may know was recently charged with rape and human trafficking, called the allegations against Brand a, quote, matrix attack. Conservative pundit Ben Shapiro called the timing suspicious, saying that Brand was being targeted for political views. Even the owner of X, Elon Musk, declared his support, writing, quote, "That man is not evil." It's like a perfect who's who list. It's exactly who you would think. It's exactly the people doing the same thing. All of these people, who are all just a single node in a network away from Donald Trump, function within the same ecosystem that combines extreme skepticism bordering on nihilism for institutions like the law or the media with just total gullibility towards the supposed anti-establishment truth tellers. I mean, why would Russell Brand lie? Why would Andrew Tate lie? They seem trustworthy. It's a complete inversion. And how you get real information to the folks that trust them without them just dismissing it out of hand, it's literally the fundamental problem for American democracy at a moment where its future is really very much in doubt.
Yeah, I thought that was so well said. I saw it and wanted to share that commentary from Chris Hayes diagnosing the problem. He went on to have a couple of great guests, Jamel Bowie and Josh Marshall from Talking Points Memo on to talk about that. Highly recommend that segment. And also this from CNN's fact checker, Daniel Dale. And then we'll get to my conversation with Waj. But Daniel Dale fact checking the NBC News interview with Donald Trump. And this is, I thought, pretty good, too. You might want to share it with your friends if you hadn't heard it. You don't have to listen to the Trump interview. You just listen to the fact check. I think it's good stuff.
It was an interview filled with false claims, some of which I'm comfortable calling lies, and I think abortion was one of the topics on which he was most dishonest. So he claimed during this interview that New York State and others have passed laws allowing people to kill babies after birth. That is out and out wrong. No state has done so, Republican or Democratic. That is infanticide illegal in all 50 states. New York, in fact, passed a 24-week abortion limit with exceptions after that for the health and life of the pregnant woman and the viability of the fetus. And that, of course, was not all. He repeated his false claim that Nancy Pelosi had been in charge of Capitol security on January 6, 2021. That is false, as is his claim that Pelosi rejected an offer of 10,000 National Guard troops that he made. There was no evidence he even made the offer. Pelosi says she never received such an offer. And in fact, it is Donald Trump, the president of the United States, who had the authority to order the National Guard to the Capitol on that day. He repeated his out-and-out lie that he won the 2020 election, that he was cheated, that it was rigged. Of course, we know this is false. He made a claim that he had heard that there were no people on the terrorist watch list encountered at the southern border under him in 2019, that the number has exploded today. In fact, the number in fiscal year 2019 was actually higher to this point in the fiscal year than it is this year under President Biden. He repeated his false claim that he had killed the Nord Stream 2 Russian gas pipeline until Biden revived it. In fact, he never killed it. It was about 90% complete before Trump imposed sanctions on it during his presidency. And then, still during his presidency, Russia announced that it was going to resume construction. He also exaggerated even on facts where the actual truth, the actual facts would be helpful to him. For example, he claimed, talking about inflation, that the price of bacon has gone up by, he said, 5 times under Joe Biden. Well, it has gone up, like a lot of things, but it's gone up about 11%, not 5 times, not even close. He also said that the U.S. left behind about $85 billion worth of military equipment upon the withdrawal from Afghanistan. The actual number is significant, but again, nowhere close to what Trump said. It is about $7 billion.
All right, there you go. Daniel Dale over there on CNN. Boy looks like he's like 12 years old. I called him a boy. He's a grown man, but he looks very, very young. But he does a damn good job fact-checking there over at CNN Trump on Meet the Press. All right, now I'm going to now talk about that with Wajahat Ali, who is my guest today. But just want to remind you, thank you very much to all those who have signed up for paid subscriptions recently or upgraded your account. Really appreciate that. But if you haven't signed up, or if you're a new listener, which we do get plenty of new listeners all the time, then please go over to patreon.com/Pete Dominic. I do these podcasts each and every day out of my solar-powered shed just north of New York City after almost 15 years in corporate media, and this is my whole empire. So I put a lot into it every day, getting you the best guests I can, hopefully hosting great conversations and editing them. I edit them really well, I think, to sound silky smooth most of the time, minus plenty of editing errors, which, if there are any today or any day, email me immediately, standupwithpete@gmail.com, or text, or reach out to me any way you can. If you've got my contacts, let me know. Always want to make it better. Okay. Wajahat Ali is one of my favorite people to talk to. He's hilarious. He is brilliant. We met at the Aspen Ideas Fest years ago, where we were both speakers, as well as on CNN, where he later became a contributor for about a year. He's also a contributor at the New York Times for several years, and just one of the most brilliant guys I know. You've got to get his book. Go back to Where You Came From, which is so good, now out in paperback, and you can read him at the Daily Beast. Follow him on the social media, Twitter, he's still there, and Threads. Ladies and gentlemen, Wajahat Ali. I don't know, we always just start. As soon as he pops on the screen, I hit record. I was singing Catholic Church songs to him, and we were off to the races. Here we go.
Waj has gone, Waj has risen, Waj will come again.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, Christians.
Have you been to a Catholic church, Catholic services?
Yeah, man. I went to an all-boys Jesuit Catholic high school for 4 years. Every week, once a month, there was Mass. That was mandatory. Every Friday, there was Mass, which meant we had half days. And I remember, like, no one teaches you anything. They just assume that you're Catholic. So I had no idea what Eucharist was or any of this stuff. I just had to learn. I remember during one of these the Masses, like, there was there was like this little flat bread. I'm like, why is everyone eating cardboard?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, everyone's eating it. I'm hungry. And then I ate it. And then you'd think as a Muslim, I would burn up and go to hell. But it was just like very tasty. Actually, it was very dry, flat, not tasty bread. And then they said I ate Jesus. And I felt slightly conflicted about it, but I survived.
Have you told this story publicly? Do your parents know about this?
My parents are aware of my brief conversion to Catholicism as a result of hunger. But I have not felt any shame. And then others who are Jewish or not Muslim and have also gone to Catholic school, whenever I share the story, they're like, I also ate it. I was hungry. I didn't know.
Wow. I was such a good Catholic boy. I waited till First Communion. I was so anticipating. And when I got that body of Christ, I just remember thinking immediately, is there any dipping sauce?
Exactly. Because I thought the body of Christ would go much better with hummus. And there was no hummus. And you're sitting there thinking, you're like, Catholics, white Catholics, you might want to take a cue from us brown folks. We can make this a lot more delicious. But I was always respectful, and I learned a lot. And I think I've shared this on your show before, that the school that I went to, Bellarmine, the motto, it was Jesuits. So the motto is for others, like faith through service. And they made us do 100 hours of community service in order to graduate high school. So I did pretty well. And I always joke that every semester, you went to Catholic school. I'm sure you know people who do. They try to like low key make you into a Catholic, but like it's very unsubtle. And every semester they do like a religious studies, Bible as literature. And so in all these classes every semester, the highest grade was attained by one Wajahat Ali, a Muslim, followed by Kalyan Neelam Raju, the Hindu, followed by Naveed Mustafavi, the lapsed Muslim. And you could hear Father Allender. His heart just used to crack. His Jesuit heart cracked, and one tear rolled down his cheek when he announced the grades.
That is an amazing story.
I like the stories. I like the morals. I really did. And for me, reading the Bible for the first time, I was like, oh, you all share the same prophets as me. So I was always into religion and spirituality, and like, but it was so fun. I wish you could see it from my eyes. They're like, does anyone know what Jesus said to his disciples in chapter 12? Anybody other than Warbalot? Anybody?
Wow. You better not let the New Yorker look into that story.
Oh, yeah. If the New Yorker looked into it, I'll just say, yeah. I was finding the emotional truth in that story.
Did you hear about that whole story about Hassan Minhaj?
Yeah, so Hassan's a friend, and so I messaged him, and I said, hey, man, are you okay? Because first of all, I've known him forever, and I didn't know what parts of the story were embellished. I just assumed, like many others, a lot of it was true. And so I just said, listen, are you okay? Because I see you're trending for the wrong reasons. And he goes, yeah, man, I'm fine. What, do you think it's bad? I'm like, I don't know, man. It's you and your audience and your persona. And he says, I'm fine. I feel good. I feel most comedians will get it. I'm like, well, I think you should address it. And he goes, it's the first thing I'm going to address in my next show. I could tell you within Muslim and South Asian communities, it's been a mixed bag. So people are like, we like Hassan. He's talented. We have very few people who've made it. We don't see like this is as big as a story. God forbid if it was like a Me Too story, something like that. Okay. But at the same time, would I have exaggerated or lied about X, Y, and Z? No. And, so a lot of people thought, like one of the stories about his kids, they're like, dude, I thought that was real. I didn't know. And so other comedians, I was just following it on social media, and I wanted your take on this. Some comedians like, whatever, man. I don't think that Dave Chappelle actually saw a baby selling crack in the Tenderloin. But then other comedians are like, when you posit yourself out there as being a sincere truth teller and people are invested in you in a story that they assume is true, this feels like kind of a betrayal. So I was very curious on your take.
I love Hassan. I think he's brilliant. I think that special was one of my favorite stand-up specials, the recent one that I think some of those jokes were featured in. I loved it, and I love him. I think he's a great guy. He treats everybody really well.
Really good guy.
I think that the joke about, he told the joke about an ex-girlfriend, and he even told her that it warned her it was going to be in the act, and then blurred her face out when he did this multimedia presentation in that special. Apparently, she got some bad, emails or attacks, and, he should have cleaned that up. I think he made some mistakes for sure, but he's not Russell Brand,
man.
He,
in a strange, in a strange way, that Russell Brand story came in. You're like, okay, if you want to talk about problematic, this is where it's a very interesting conversation. Hassan's The New Yorker piece brings up, like, what's the fine line between a comedian who is entertaining an audience and embellishing and exaggerating versus how much truth you owe, right? And is there a betrayal or is it not? Versus Russell Brand, man, I don't know if you read that piece or you saw the documentary, but that's damning. Like, this man looks like a straight up predator and a groomer. And I mean, they have the evidence, they have the witnesses, they have the text messages. It seems like a pattern. And the fact that he has made the shift, a very lucrative shift, Pete, that if you want to make money, you should be in the anti-science, anti-democracy wing. But unfortunately, you're a masochist like me. Some people are saying he got into this 2-3 years ago, knowing full well this would come out, and to kind of groom an audience of red pillars who don't believe in the media whatsoever to take his side and just simply say that this is the liberal woke media coming after him. But it isn't. They're coming after him because it seems very clearly that he was a predator.
Well, the cancellations are coming fast and quick this week, or whatever we want to call them. Not the cancellations. Nobody is really like, we can talk about that. But, I think Russell Brand is going to be just fine. I think Hassan's going to be just fine, by the way, as well. And you mentioned comedians, how much truth is there? We have no responsibility to tell the truth on stage. No one's ever said that about comedy. That people get caught up with, sometimes comedians speaking truth to power and sharing anecdotes. But you could mention about 10 other Dave Chappelle jokes about things that did not happen, and any other comedian as well. There's no expectation of reality. It's just supposed to be funny. That's the only rule, whether you laugh or not. But when going back to, Russell Brand, I mean, you hear Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson both saying he's being canceled by the, global conspiracies because he's spoken out against vaccines and so on. I think we're going to see more of that. We didn't see a lot of people coming out and on behalf of, say, Harvey Weinstein or some of these other really blatant Bill Cosby. I mean, you saw it, but I guess you always saw it. But what do you make of where we're at now with, there's some defense of Russell Brand already, and we'll see what happens with the guy. But I think he's out there on the fringe making money on YouTube. What does this mean for the guy?
That's astute analysis and observation. We were talking about that yesterday, that this is going to be the new normal, where you have bypassed institutions that you yourself have diminished and harmed because you realize that they will hold you accountable. And so to escape accountability, what you do is you radicalize your base, oftentimes a global base of young men vis-a-vis social media. With Brand, he's now a wellness guru, folks, Russell Brand, and, anti-vax, conspiracy theorist, MAGA. And so what you're witnessing is all these men who might have a troubled history when it comes to women, when it comes to anti-Semitism, when it comes to racism. Instead of facing accountability, they're so terrified about the alleged cancellations of a few people who, let's be honest, very few people actually got canceled, right? Like, it took a lot to cancel Harvey Weinstein.
Dude, Mel Gibson is in so many movies.
John Wick movie and the new John Wick series.
I mean, so you'd be hard fought that Louis C.K. selling out arenas. You'd be hard fought to, and they're not all obviously in the same category. I really hate doing that. But the point is that cancellation is not, what are we talking about anymore with that?
No, but what I was thinking about this while driving just randomly is that, everyone assumed that demographics are destiny, which is nonsense, and that the future will be woke and liberal. It won't. The future, I think, will be increasingly authoritarian and more and more, you'll see these two extremes, because these folks realize that, oh no, the darkies and the women are demanding equity and equality. They're coming after us. We're being replaced. Elon Musk, the one percenters, the guy Tim Gunner, I'm sure you saw that viral clip where he said with his chest out that we have to punish the workers, right?
The Australian finance guy.
Yeah. And like, this is how they think. How dare the plebes demand a living wage? How dare they strike? I mean, you saw it. Like, Bob Iger said it. We're going to have to, allegedly it was Bob Iger, but people say it was him, the head of Disney, who said, it's going to be bad, but we're just going to have to wait to make them go homeless.
GM CEO Mary Barra, UAW on strike in many locations, said something to the effect of, she earns her $30 million. Like, don't say that out loud.
Yeah, but this is how they are. So you're seeing the old guard, the 1%, power, being threatened, and power is overwhelmingly white and heterosexual and male. And so instead of reforming and becoming better and updating their software, what they're now aggressively retreating to is this safe space of their own creation, following the model of, wait for it, Donald Trump. And so you see Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, Russell Brand, Donald Trump. And also, this is what's the scary part is, it's not just Republicans and, troubled, toxic men and the 1% who are following Trump's successful philosophy, which led him to the White House. Also, fascists around the world. Bolsonaro in Brazil, they're like, fake news, right? And so they're all taking the same cue, and they're bypassing these institutions, because when you're on social media, you can do everything. And now no one knows what's the truth anymore, Pete. What's real, what's not real. Do you take a vaccine? Do you not take a vaccine? I get stuff. I mean, what's so horrifying is I know a lot of doctors. I'm married into doctors. And some of these doctors, man, are sending me bunk science. I read this article. Have you read it? I'm like, holy shit, man. Doctors are spreading this. You know what I'm saying? So it's a scary time.
I put it on Facebook just specifically yesterday. I just posted I'm just tired of everybody thinking that they are researchers. To be a professional researcher, you go to college and you literally study research and you get a degree in research. And people think that their ability to read an article, much less the abstract of a study, is somehow even remotely close to what a researcher does. Like, let them do it. Let them do the research. It's just the height of arrogance to me. And then they're all on the take. All of the researchers are like,
all of them.
They're all on the take to find a new cure or to debunk somebody else. You really want to make money. I mean, it's outrageous that everybody thinks they're an expert. But
no. If you tear your Achilles, you have to go to Joe Rogan. He knows.
Oh, the jokes were so funny when that happened the other night. Hey, I want to ask you your take on. I saw you and quoted you on yesterday's show along with Jared Yates Sexton, but I had Michael Cohen on. I don't know if you heard or saw what he said about the Meet the Press hosted Donald Trump on Kirsten Welker's first episode back. It wasn't lost on a lot of people that that's a woman, that's a black woman. She's hosting this patriarchal white supremacist guy on her first show. And I feel like you can see it all ways, some ways. What do you think about NBC News hosting Donald Trump? What are your thoughts on it? Because right now, I agree with probably the more of him, the better for democracy, the better for Joe Biden, because he hurts himself both every time he speaks. He reminds the people of what they think or don't think about him, and he might be putting himself in more legal trouble every time he talks. Your thoughts? So
I understand your position. It's a rational position, but the reason why I disagree with it is because I believe the damage outweighs the alleged self-incrimination. So example, he just gish galloped and just ran circles around Kristen Welker. Yeah. I mean, that was a very embarrassing performance because most people aren't Mehdi Hassan or Jonathan Swain or Christiane Amanpour. They don't have the skill set. That's an indictment of our media industry. Most of these individuals just lack the skill set. And Welker lacks the skill set to take him on in the way that he has to be taken on,
chose not to. She might have had the skill set, and they just chose a different strategy. I think she does have the skill set. She didn't want to be combative. What might be more depressing is that they choose not to, right? Because they don't want to make power uncomfortable.
So what was gained from it? What was gained from it? He got another platform, just like CNN gave him, to literally promote lies, and also as scholars of fascism who you've had on your show say, essentially just engage in fascist rhetoric, which then becomes normalized in mainstream. Now, I'll give you an example of why I think the manner in which NBC and others have done it should not be done and is a failure, is he then again repeated this huge lie that he repeated on the CNN stage, where he was given, as you all remember, a 1-hour platform where he just ran circles around Caitlin Collins, right? And that was the era of Chris Licht, the world's smallest
And by the way,
violin.
I thought she did as well as a person could in such a situation, trying to fact check him in real time, but it's impossible because it's just a flood of shit. You're just getting sprayed.
And she's shit everywhere. It's literally, it's like a hurricane of shit, and you've just given her an umbrella, right? And so I'll give you one example of why it's not worth it.
Yeah.
He repeated the lie that Democrats are aborting babies post-birth. It was not confronted or challenged on CNN. It was not confronted or challenged by Welker. And there was numerous lies after the fact that NBC said, oh, he lied about this, by the way, after you've seen the video, and who knows who's actually going to read this article.
Yeah.
In real time, Pete, as we have seen, as their data shows, once you platform certain individuals and you give them the credibility, it helps mainstream it. The people watching it say, oh, this must be legit. So when they did the both sides on climate change back in the day, even though 99% of scientists acknowledge that climate change is real and Donald Trump believes it's a hoax created by China, the end result was more people became climate change deniers. Because you platformed it, you didn't push back, you didn't do your work, you gave them equal footing. And that's why I feel more damage was done, because you platformed a man who has 4 indictments, 91 criminal counts, who got an hour to, as you said, flood the zone with shit. She blocked some of the shit, but a lot of shit escaped. And it muddied the waters.
One pushback, and we move on to the next, which people would say, he got over 75 million votes. He is by far the front runner. What are you going to do? Not talk to him? It's not like the media, people who interview him, when they interview him, how they interview him. It's got to happen at some point. He's got so much support. You can't not talk to him, but you have to challenge him. You have to Mehdi Hassan, as you mentioned.
Yeah, you have to challenge him the way Swain did, the way that Mehdi would do, or as others have articulated, like Jay Rosen, I think you've had on your show before, and other, Margaret Sullivan and others, I agree with them. You have to create a new model for Trump, who is an authoritarian figure who incited a violent mob against our democracy. So what you must do then, I think, is you tape it. I was thinking about, someone asked me this question earlier today. You ever watch football? Monday Night Football, it's today. Eli and Peyton Manning on ESPN2, they watch the game and they have like live color commentary as the game is happening. So maybe you record the interview beforehand, and then as the interview is going, you stop and say, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Because he lies as he breathes, Pete. So either you need a skilled interviewer and journalist who in real time holds him to account, like Swain did, and Swain took notes from Mehdi, or you create a new model for this type of authoritarian right-wing man who has 91 criminal counts and is still beholden to the lie that he won the election. Because the damage, see, what you're saying is, well, you got to interview him. What happens if he's doing damage and unleashing violence against, you don't have to do anything. There's no gun to the head of any of these corporate media platforms that says you have to interview Trump. I'm sorry, there isn't. So you have to create a new model to deal with the beast and the monster that, let's be honest, that they nurtured and fed and enabled.
Let me move on to Lauren Boebert, because it's less consequential, and there's plenty of jokes that are easy and fun to make, but the Republican edge is very thin. They have like 5 more seats or something. Then each one of these seats matters. She did not help herself. She got disinvited to some conservative religious conference she was
right? Yeah, Texas Youth Conference or something like that.
I mean, do you have any thoughts about that story, and how do we keep it constantly? It's like, what's his name? Santos seems like he's like, he and her and others, we should be reminded that they are present every day, all day. Republicans should be reminded.
I agree with you. And this is where, well, she gets very hands-on with her constituents. So that's one positive. I had to. I'm sorry. How could I not? I had to slip in one.
She reaches across the aisle. Jonathan Lemire said this morning in the Morning Joe.
Look, trashy person does trashy things and has trashy politics. I think the reason why we should focus on this is, first and foremost, it exposes the rank hypocrisy of the modern GOP that claims the mantle of God and religion, and is promoting hateful, intolerant policies against women, people of color, and especially LGBTQ, is accusing everyone who disagrees with them of being a groomer or a sexual deviant, really focusing on drag queens. And now in Tennessee, there's like legislation that limits the speech essentially of drag queens, right? Where they can perform, right? So there are real life consequences, Pete, to the hypocrisy and the hypocritical policies of a person like a Boebert, who's an extremist. So then when this gets revealed, they're like, here you are on your high horse literally using and abusing your power to go after the most marginalized. Meanwhile, you're getting groped in the matinee special of Beetlejuice, right? If it was like a Las Vegas review, but this is like, she's vaping, she's taking videos, she's being disrespectful to the audience, and then she's playing boob tag and crotch tag, and then she lies about it. And while that's happening, God gives us a gift that Governor Noem, another so-called Bible-thumping moralist, is allegedly conducting an affair with Corey Lewandowski. Both of them are married. And then you got Ken Paxton, who's so corrupt that even Texas Republicans are like, damn, he's corrupt. But then they're like, whoa, he's our corrupt guy. Let's impeach him. Then you got Tommy Tuberville all of a sudden saying, I don't care that our own military officials are saying that our military preparedness is weak and damage is being done to our national security. I'm going to hold this up because of abortion, right? And Jorge Santos III, the first man on the moon, whom I forgot about. So I think keeping this in the news every single day, I agree with you, is in the benefit of Democrats, especially when you tie into their policies. And I think it will harm Republicans moving forward because they're stuck, man. This is their base. This is who they are.
That was a great litany of their Hall of Villains.
Top of the head, by the way.
Huh?
That was top of the head, too. So if you give me like 5 minutes.
Very impressive.
I could probably do a couple more.
The last thing I'll ask you, and I think to the point that you're saying, what helps, what hurts. What are your thoughts on this impeachment effort and what's going to happen? Who was it yesterday? Hakeem Jeffries, I think it was on Meet the Press or something like that. One of the Sunday shows, it was ABC, and he kept saying the Republican Civil War. That's his new talking point. And it is a war within the Republican Party. They're divided now. And Kevin McCarthy, they're cursing at each other. What does impeachment do? Does it help them? Does it hurt Joe Biden?
Okay, so first and foremost, I think it's important to note that there's no grounds for this impeachment. It's all BS. Literally, there's all the evidence shows that there's no connection.
Hunter Biden was just indicted for that gun charge.
Oh, yeah, a charge that no one else is indicted for. And if actually they indict and convict, they indicted him. If they convict him, gonna put the NRA in a pickle, Pete, because it goes against right-wing talking. They're so dysfunctional. So 2 things I think will happen with impeachment. I tweeted. I do think it'll hurt the Republicans, number 1, because they haven't made the case. Number 2, Hunter Biden is not running for president. Joe Biden is. I do think Joe Biden, and this is what I said before, and I'll say again, by him not throwing his son under the bus, by him embracing his son, by him leaning in with the Biden empathy and saying my son is a former addict, is troubled, I think it'll help him. And I also think that the impeachment, as we have seen as of this week, as of this recording, is revealing the fissures where McCarthy knows it's bad politics, but has to do it because the right-wing Freedom Caucus, MAGA wing of the Republican Party is saying, you better do this or else. So he kind of half-assedly brings forth this inquiry. Now he's stuck. It's still not enough because Gates dresses him down to the point where Democrats are like, God dang, what's happening over at your house? And now the next story, as of next week, they're so dysfunctional that they realize that they got to pass this spending bill, and they have an impasse on the spending bill. So the Civil War analogy is a good one.
Yeah, they'll take maybe they won't take the blame for both the impeachment efforts and the government shutdown. So, but usually it gets both sides.
But it's only for a minority, right? It's for a minority, and most people are like, what the F are you doing? And then the last thing I'll say is in 2 things. Then you have to also take into account that it's not like 2016. In 2016, this playbook really worked, right? They did a both sides analysis, her emails.
Yeah.
But in this case, you got 4 indictments, 91 criminal counts, and a Georgia trial that's going to be televised. And we know how the media works. You cannot escape those headlines. And on top of that, this buffoonery by Boebert and others. And on top of that, what I've said on your show, and I think you agree with me, abortion. Women have not forgotten, Pete. And I think women and young people are going to come out in droves in 2024.
I think that you're right for all those reasons. All right. It was great to catch up with you. I really appreciate you stopping by, my friend. I've missed you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah, there he goes. Wajahat Ali, everybody. Go read him at the Daily Beast. Go get his book. Go follow him on the social medias. Listen to the podcast Democracy-ish. I forgot to plug that at the top. Really, really good stuff from him and Danielle Moody. Always love when Waj stops by. But that's all I've got for you today. Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe, write a rating and a review at Spotify, iTunes. Subscribe over at YouTube for videos, youtube.com/standupwithpete. All right. John Carroll's got a great new song out called Union Made. I'll add a link for you to watch this on YouTube. He's got a music video to go with it. And John says this new rendition of the Woody Guthrie classic in solidarity with SAG-AFTRA, WGA, and UAW workers everywhere. This version of Union Made is our gift to the movement. We're uploading a shorter version of the performance on Instagram, Reels, TikTok, in the hope that more people will be inspired to post their own photos to the song. Next week, we'll post a karaoke track so people can write and sing out their own verses. There you go, folks. John Carroll, SAG-AFTRA member. Since 1975, it's Union Made.
Well, there once was a Union Maid. She never was afraid of the goons and the ginks and the company things and the deputy sheriffs that made the raid. She went to the Union Hall when a meeting it was called, and when the company boys come around, well, she always stood her ground. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union, yes I am. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union till the day I die. So you folks who wanna be free, won't you take this tip from me? Break out of that mold, we won't be sold. We got a fighting history. We'll strike for workers' rights. All workers must unite. Just roll those bones like Mother Jones to the front of every fight. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union. Till the day I die. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union. Yes, I am. I'm sticking with the Union. Yes, I am. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking with the Union. I'm sticking with the Union till the day I die. I'm sticking with the Union. Till the day I die.
Union Made, John Carroll. Spread it far and wide, friends. Talk to you tomorrow.